school side, the 22,227,000 is also an adjusted amount. The FY 2010 is based on taking the fixed cost number out after looking at the total revenue estimates, which include the governor's number for cuts for 2010. It does not include the governor's meals and room tax. Okay? So that's not for certain at this point. So it's $600 something thousand. If you look at it from that point of view, so there's 150,000 cuts to go to general government and school. Estimated transfer from $100,000 from solid waste I've removed. And health insurance reflects a 6.5% increase. As you recall, a few weeks ago it was 8%, and Greg got, I think, at the end of last week, notice from the insurance company what the increase would be. When you look at that, you'll see that the difference between 2009 and the reduced 2009 budget and 2010 would leave general government with $64,000 of additional money over the adjusted, or minus $85,000 from the 2009 original budget. And similarly, the school of 124 and then minus 25. Any questions about that? So, from a recommendation point of view, and we've talked about this, is level funding of the health insurance by changing to plan design. And that's worth about $371,000. And then lower the cap on non-exempt debt ceiling by $150,000. We established the debt stabilization fund using the Berry money. Last year we capped the debt at a number, and I think based on the Eisenhower settlements and the capital plan of last year, that number was about $505,000 for this past this year, going into this year. So if we take additional money of $150,000, and I propose, by the way, of doing that for this year and next year. Now, what's not said here is that there is money left in the original Eisenhower money and some other funds that Joe Tassoni has identified that at April town meeting we're going to put that money back into the debt stabilization fund. So essentially, this lowering the debt ceiling is neutral in terms of taking money out of debt stabilization.
Covered by what's in those funds.
Right. Doing that, basically, if we look at the notes, the $150,000 cuts from both general government and school are reflected in the 2009 figures. Eliminate the transfer from the solid waste. Level fund the health insurance. Lower the exempt debt ceiling by $150,000. And the governor's budget cuts without increasing meal and room tax is not included in those numbers. The difference, again, if you look at general government, would mean that there'd be $211,838 difference between the 2009 budget with the cuts, and similarly the school would be $411,000, and that would. And if you wanted to compare it with the original 2000 budget, it's the numbers on the right-hand side of $61,838,261. If, before we even go into that, just so you get an idea of how the distribution of costs are, under this plan, the fixed cost is about 28% of the budget of our revenue. Now, as it consumes off the top 28%. general government is 25%, and the schools are 47%. If you wanted to look at the ratio between general government and schools, keep in mind that in the fixed costs, there's debt service, which is both town and school, non-exempt debt, and also the employee benefits, which a larger proportion of that is covering schools because they have a larger number of employees in the program. The school is 66%, and the general government is 34% of what's left over after fixed costs. And I've used that ratio in dividing the money that's left from the fixed costs. Okay, in other words, typically it's been 60-40. It's kind of a, and over time the school budget has grown, and it's a 66-34 rough ratio, give or take a few tenths of a percent. Any questions about that? So, it's clear to me, and I'm sure as discussions, that in this economy, under the situation we have, there's no other sources of funds that are available, at least in our site today. And it's essential that we maintain services in this economy. And we can do that, I believe, by modifying the employee health insurance plan to match the benefits and costs of the GIC. Now, to bring it down to a level where we don't have an increase this year. Freeze the salaries and step increases for all our employees for FY 2010. That, by doing that, that money that's in excess of what we had last year would cover increases in expenses in specific areas. I think the one area that's we don't have detail on at this point is the impact of sped on the school department. That number is difficult at best to get your hands around at this early stage. The one thing that I think when we reviewed the budgets, and our eyebrows were raised at a few of the proposals that were made for cuts, and I think the cuts were aimed at trying to maintain the salaries and provide salary increases in the budgets. There was a proposal for across-the-board cuts, and in the process of doing that, and I put it up there, the one thing that stuck out, and there were a few others, was elimination of school crossing guards. And I don't think any one of us here was with that. And there were some other things, I can't recall them at this moment, that didn't seem to make sense from the point of view of across-the-board cuts. So I think we have to kind of adopt a policy that we're going to solve this problem, not necessarily with across-the-board cuts, but we need to look at and pull out those things that absolutely can't change, and then make adjustments in various budgets to deal with these shortfalls. And then, because of failure to achieve items 1 and 2 will result in cuts to services and corresponding employee layoffs, because it's not worth to do anything else. I think that's about where we are, and I thought this would be a good point to open up a discussion associated with that. The goal would be to basically say these are the numbers we ought to be working with associated with bringing to closure a budget for FY 2010. Keep in mind that if the governor's budget passes and he gets approval to raise those taxes, there could be some money coming in. We won't know about that until later. If we know about it before April town meeting, then we can make appropriate adjustments. If we don't, well, we may have to make an adjustment downstream if that money comes to fruition. We also have to keep in mind that FY 2011 doesn't look like it's going to be much better. As a result, we need to be careful about that. And what we haven't talked about, but we have been doing some work, is dealing with the snow and ice deficit in April. Find enough funds to cover that so that it's not a negative impact on the numbers that we might begin our budgeting process. If we feel uncomfortable about that, then we might want to say we need to reserve some of that money in next year's budget for the snow and ice deficit. Because it doesn't look like we'll be in a free cash situation come year end. And there aren't any other funds to raid to pay for snow and ice deficit until the town meeting. Lastly, we have the obligation to put money aside for the overlay reserve. Not the overlay, for the revale. We need to get some numbers from the assessors as to whether or not we can cover that. Finance slide up here. So, thoughts, anybody?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think it's a reasoned and thoughtful approach you've taken to looking at the budget and the problems we're facing. Consider the state of the economy currently, and I don't think we've hit bottom yet, and it may not come, hopefully it comes before the end of the year, but I don't think it'll come before the end of the calendar year. And if we're able to come up with an approach that we can avoid layoffs, given the economy, if we have to lay off, I would feel for every person that we would have to lay off, because I don't see in this economy where they're going to find a job anytime soon. So that'd be, if we can avoid that at all costs, that'd be a terrific thing for all of our employees. But also, I think every employee in town, both on the town side and the school side, must realize they need to agree to the salary freeze. That's the only way we're going to get to accomplishing this goal of maintaining the services that we're providing in this fiscal year anyhow. So, as I said, I think it's a reasonable, thoughtful approach that you've taken in terms of looking at the budget as we move forward.
Greg. Mr. Chairman, you and I had worked on this proposal, and certainly from my perspective, achieving savings in health insurance is key. We've met with our insurer, we've met with our employees, we've apprised them of the fact that the town is going to be looking for something that it can afford. I think everyone has an understanding for that. Certainly the employees have an understanding of our situation, and we look forward to their cooperation. So, you know, someone who's looking at the insurance bit is not only are we looking at perhaps changing the co-payment structure for our employees for this fiscal year, what we need to do is look at affordable plans effective the new fiscal year. There's only so much you can change and tweak the co-payment structure to achieve savings, to achieve the savings that we're looking for in terms of essentially level funding health insurance. We'll go back and we'll work with our insurance company and our employees in coming back with a plan that meets that need, and it is available. I've talked to our insurance company. It's not pie in the sky. There are plans that are available that municipalities do have, and again, we're looking forward to entering into those discussions with our employees in the upcoming collective bargaining negotiations.
Joe?
No, I certainly understand the position that we're in, and I think all of our employees do also. I do agree with Mr. Delaney. I want to avoid layoffs